In this video, we will create a connection to a simple web API. For this API, we will use the catfact API, which can be accessed at catfact.ninja/fact. The application will simply show a new catfact every time the user opens this page, for example, by clicking the menu item. We start by making a new flow part, which we will name getACatFact. Now we go into add mode to add an action to our flow part. We select the connection action and then web API to connect to a web API, such as a REST API or a webhook. We enter the URL for the API. And then we select the type of request, in this case GET. Read the documentation of the API you want to connect to for information on the type of request to use. This simple API doesn't require any authentication. The documentation of the API you connect to will tell you which type of authentication to use. We can skip the additional query parameters since our API doesn't require any. Also, no additional headers are required and no cookie values. The catfact API returns data as JSON, which is the most common format. Now we can structure the response data that the API sends us. We start by going into add mode and then adding a value by clicking the green add button. Most APIs start with a custom item, and then inside they have values. So we choose to add a value into this item of a specific type. Then we select texts. And finally, any text. The value is named fact, so that is what we type here. After we click done, the value is now shown in our response data. Let's add a second response value, since our API also gives back the number of characters of the fact. This time we use number and then we select integer, which is a whole number such as -1, 0, or 5, for example. The name for this value is length. After clicking done, we now see that both the values are present in the response data. Note that the structure that Triggre shows here is similar to what will be shown in examples of the documentation of most APIs and webhooks. This makes it easy to check if your action is correctly designed. If the API returns values that you don't need, you can simply ignore them. The action will still work and will only give back those values that you have configured. Now we exit add mode and click next. We give our action a name, for example, getACatFact, and then click done. The connection action is now done and we can use the response values in the rest of the flow part. For this example, we will simply use them as outputs. When we add an output, we see that we get a few values back from our web API connection action, labeled under response. Content type is the type of content you get back, for example, application/JSON. The documentation of the API or webhook you connect to will likely specify this. Status code is a numeric value indicating the status of the request. If this value is 200, the request was successful. For any other value, please check the documentation of the web API you are connecting to. Finally, under Data, and then response body, we can see the values we've defined. Let's use the fact text as an output. Now let's also add the length as an output. Our flow part is now done, and we can use it in a user flow or automation flow. Let's use it in a user flow, which we'll name Get a Cat Fact. First, we add our flow part. Then we add a page to display the output. On the page, we can add a detail field for the fact. And one for the length. Let's add it to our application and publish. We now have our user flow that uses the Get a Cat Fact call, and every time that the user goes to this page, they get a new cat fact.